For your listening information, this episode of the Nerdy Photographer Podcast features adult language and scenarios and situations. You've been warned, this episode is definitely not safe for work. I don't know, if you ask me, it looks like a real piece of crap. Oh, hey everybody. Host of the Nerdy Photographer Podcast, Casey Fatchett here. I'm sure you're wondering what the Nerdy Photo crew and I have been up to while the show has been away on hiatus. There's been a lot of recharging of batteries. And I mean that in the figurative, we've all sort of been kind of burnt out sense, as well as the literal, we need to charge these batteries and make sure all the droids and doohickeys are completely functional. Not everything runs on a fusion reactor, apparently. Right now, I'm in the Intergalactic Turd Museum on Tidal X5, where they artistically display the refuse of both the famous and infamous. I have to say, they've got some real interesting shit in here. Oh, that's museum curator D3Z-NTS. He invited me here to investigate what he believes to be a series of robberies. Yeah, but why anyone would steal this stuff is beyond me. That's an interesting point. On this episode of the Nerdy Photographer Podcast, we are joined by freelance art journalist and editor, as well as podcast host Helen Stoilas, who will be sharing a bizarre tale from photography and art history. I have no idea what the subject is, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion. No, I'm not going to be very hands-on with this one. Absolutely not. Check out my conversation with Helen right after the break.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how we handle the situation.
Did you have a contract?
Well, I had one I found for free online, but my lawyer says it might not hold up.
Next time you should head over to nerdyphotographer.com. They've got a selection of contract templates for weddings, events, portrait sessions, and even for hiring second photographers and associate photographers, which would certainly have helped you in your current situation.
Really? I will check that out. Nerdyphotographer.com?
Yep, nerdyphotographer.com. They've got all sorts of contracts and agreements that can help make sure to protect you and your clients. So what are you going to do?
Well, we just have to wait and see what happens, I guess.
So, no pants on?
Oh, no, anything below the waist. Totally Porky Pig in it.
Impressive.
Not really. It was pretty cold out.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Cam, the provocateur.
And together we are the SpyHards podcast. Every Tuesday we decode the best and the worst of spy cinema to decipher if they make the knock list.
That's right, the knock list is the need-to-see official classics of the spy genre. The best of the best, so to speak. Nobody does it better. From Bourne to Bond and Powers to Palmer, you can bet we will cover it.
So subscribe now and revel in the audio equivalent of a smooth martini. Just search for SpyHards, that's SpyHards on all major podcast apps. And let's just hope you find us before we find you.
Listening, hello, and welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I am your host, Casey Fatchett. I am here today with a longtime friend, Helen Stoilas.
Friends! Yay!
Friend. Helen is a art writer and editor and historian. I would say art historian. And
I don't have a degree. You can't call me an art historian.
Okay.
I can't do.
Oh well, yeah.
Don't worry. Art nerd. You can call me an art nerd.
Art nerd,
definitely.
for sure. Art nerd for sure. And I just go to you with all of my art history questions. And member of the You're No Fun Anymore podcast, as well as an as yet untitled art podcast to be coming out hopefully in the near future. We'll be sure to share that with all of our listeners when that's available. Helen, you get to we were just discussing it. You're the inaugural guest to get the Dice Breaker. It's a new feature here on the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm going to roll a 20-sided die, get a little dodecahedron action going on here, and that's going to determine a short topic of conversation.
I love it.
I might have to add the
Gamify the podcast.
game mechanics. Oh, and it's a 12.
All right. Middle of the road.
It is a Mad Lib Instagram bio or artist statement.
Okay. I have to fill in the blanks?
Yes. Hold on. I'm going.
Okay, great. Mad Libs was one of my favorite games as a kid, actually. Me and my sister would play them all the time in the car.
I love it.
It was like our go-to road trip game.
All right. We're going to start. Verb.
Drive.
Another verb.
Think.
Yes. Body part.
Elbow.
Another body part.
Toe.
Adjective.
Bubbly.
Object.
Glove.
Nice. An event. Like historical event or just, whatever.
Historical event.
Or it could be a historical event or just an event.
Easter. I don't know why.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. That's good. Adjective. That could be the Greek part of you that's just saying Easter is important.
Easter is important. Another adjective?
Yes.
Scraggly.
Ooh. This is kind of long. So, this is the artist.
Okay.
Activity.
Judo.
Ooh.
You're going to know why I picked judo soon.
I will, in length of time.
Minute.
Verb.
Sniff.
Nice. Noun.
Sock. Looking around my bedroom.
Another noun.
Platypus. Why do I have a platypus in my bedroom?
That's a good question. A country.
Greece.
ING verb.
Shuffling.
Ooh, nice. Oh, another ING verb.
Wearing.
Noun.
Bracelet.
I maybe made this a little long. I think it'll be fun. Object.
Tree.
Verb.
Moisten.
Ooh. I know a friend of ours who's going to hate that.
I know. I'm sorry to our listeners for that.
Another verb.
You might have to put a trigger warning on this just because of that. Another verb.
Yeah.
Clear.
Ooh, also good. Activity.
Running.
Noun. Starting to think maybe I made this way long.
Noun. Can.
Another noun.
Shoe. You're getting a lot of things in my closet.
Verb.
Verb. Listen. Did I do that one yet? I don't think so.
I got it. A geographical feature.
Mountain.
Sure.
Okay.
Another noun.
Tea kettle.
Yeah. And one more adjective.
Pink.
Oh, sorry. No, there's one more adjective.
One more adjective. Fuzzy.
Ooh, good. And here we go with your Mad Lib artist statement.
Great.
While my current works are highly conceptual, They are meant to drive the viewer to closely think about the possibilities that abound. That's actually pretty good.
I mean, I might turn this into the Met, like when we're done.
The ideas expressed by my pieces signify universal truths that I hold close to my elbow. But I hope these concepts also touch the viewer in the toe.
Yeah.
When asked,
Right in that toe.
Yeah, right in that toe. Deep in the toe.
Deep in the toe.
Sub-toe area. When asked what inspires my imagery, I often respond that symbolism plays a bubbly role in all of my pieces. It's bubbly.
Yeah.
It bubbles,
It's bubbly.
it bubbles up to the top. The theme of the recurring glove signifies a place of inner peace,
Yeah.
while subtle references to Easter and other scraggly events translate to metaphors of a more personal nature in my own life.
I've had so many scraggly Easters, just the scraggliest Easter ever.
Oh, this is going to be good. I find that judo is a deep resource for my type of work.
I cannot tell you how perfect that is for what we're about to talk about.
I will sniff anything that I find interesting.
I actually will. Yep, that's the truth.
From platypi to socks and everything in between.
Oh, no.
A recent minute-long retreat to the mountains of Greece led to a portion.
Oh, man, I should have done something longer. Yeah.
Led to a portion of this series featuring juxtapositions of cans and tea kettles and how they relate to the fuzzy arts.
The fuzzy arts. Oh, that's good.
We truly come closer to shuffling ourselves as human beings through wearing the objects we come into contact with on an everyday basis. Each object reflects the complexities of bracelets, trees, and the interactions they have on the human condition. The objects I employ are altered to reinforce, moisten, and clear the natural expression of the objects themselves. It sounds like eye drops.
My favorite medium is Visine.
I have great interest in the pink that each of these images hold, with a combination of visual stimuli that can only occur during running and perhaps dreaming.
Running and dreaming.
A good work of art should be happy every time one sees it. Such work begins a dialogue between the viewer and the art, and the more cans that are implanted into that art, the deeper the dialogue can be. The value of any piece of art is not in its price or in its shoe, but the inherent energy and the ability to act as a catalyst for listening to the viewer.
Oh, that's deep words.
think
That
it
is
actually
deep shit. No worse than many of the artist's statements that I've read in my time.
Yeah, there's I was expecting it to kind of come out ridiculous, but you know what? I may have prepared it a little too well as far as like you can just throw anything into those things and it sounds legit.
I think you've uncovered the secret to writing these.
Just throw a few adjectives in there. Whatever.
What's a noun? Let me look around. Tea kettle. There we go.
Yes. It deeply affects my art, and it has deeper meaning in all of my art. The tea kettles, the juxtaposition between cans and tea kettles. Chef's kiss.
Just wait. I'm gonna dig up some tea kettles and show you how deep they can be.
The fuzzy arts.
The fuzzy arts is so good.
A lot of judo. The sniffing worked out well.
The sniffing worked out well because that's true.
So when you were talking to me about this as yet Untitled Art podcast that you're working on, and you're talking about interesting moments in art history or bizarre moments in art history or bizarre art.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, exactly. There's so much of art that's just like fucking crazy. It's just wackadoo. Like it's just out of left field bizarre,
Yeah.
And I think that's what draws me to it.
I've had limited experience at the various art fairs that I've worked on with you. That it just amazes me to see some of the stuff. I'm like, wow, this is just scratching a very, very, very small surface. as to what's out there. And you, when we were talking about this, and you said, "I've got the piece I know exactly I'd like to talk about," and I just opened this up to look at it. And do you want to describe this to
Sure, yeah.
our listeners? I will include this with the episode notes and any social media stuff. But this piece is I have never seen this before. I am surprised.
It's a great photograph, isn't it?
It's amazing.
And it's what's so amazing about. There's many things that's amazing about it is the way it was put together, the story behind it, and like how long it's kind of lasted as this crazy image in art history. Mm-hmm. So it's Yves Klein's Leap into the Void from 1960. And it's a black and white photograph that is both like weirdly mundane and absolutely like extraordinary because it's.
I mean, this is my initial impression, and I'm looking at this. I looked it up, and I'm wondering if there are multiple angles.
It's really well done. I mean, for something before Photoshop, it's really well done, isn't it?
Well, and I'm just looking at no, I'm looking at this and it looks like I'm not sure if there are several. Oh,
there are several different angles, which we can get into definitely. So basically, to the best known version of this image of this kind of like event is it's like a Paris street.
Yeah.
Kind of like
see the woman on the bike,
brick wall. Yeah. There's a person on a bike. Way in the distance, you can see like a train on the tracks and stuff.
Yep.
Basically an empty street, and then just at the very top, like third of it, there's this. It's Yves Klein surrendering himself into this fall, and he looks like he's just kind of like he's stepped off of this ledge of the second floor of a building, and he's just kind of like curved into like he either looks like he's about to like take off flying, or he's going to face plant horribly on the street, right?
He's going to belly flop like 12 feet below onto the street.
And it's going to be real painful, or he could potentially just like take off and fly across like the countryside.
It's this like almost Superman-y kind of moment.
Totally Superman-y, totally like you're not sure what's going to happen. It's like this
there's a lot of
tension. There's a lot of tension. And I think this is why this picture is so kind of like carries to today, 50 years later, 70, 60 years later. Because it's like, it has so much potential in it.
Yeah, this definitely has a 60s Paris vibe to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's one of these images that burns in your memory. So when, you were like, you should come on my podcast, my photography podcast, I was like, okay, what kind of photograph could I talk about? And this is immediately what stuck in my brain, because it's one of those things like once you see this, it kind of like sticks itself in your mind and you're constantly thinking about it, which is what all good art should do.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at it, I am surprised I have never seen this before. The second thing I think of is there's like sort of like, I don't know, it's the architecture of Paris and it kind of tricks you a little bit.
Yeah.
Like there's sort of, looks like he's leaping off of like a gable or whatever, like that. I don't know what.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it feels like it should be much higher.
Yeah.
It feels like it's
it's only like 2 stories, but it looks like way bigger.
Yeah. It looks like,
and especially like how much he's surrendering himself and how much he's like the air underneath him, feels like he's taking like a 10-story jump rather than a 2-story jump, right? Yeah. Like he seems like he's really kind of like
he seems like he's way up in
right
the air.
out there, and it's all this leap into the void is kind of like so Yves Klein was an artist only for 7 years, which I think is kind of astounding because he's so. I mean, he's one of those big names that you usually think about him as International Kind Blue, that brilliant blue pigment, that he used and that became synonymous with him because he named it after himself, obviously. But he's really like a big conceptual artist, and a lot of his, I mean, even the International Kind Blue works, a lot of it was conceptual, and it was about what an artist does rather than the object, you know? So it was like about, it was about the artist's action, you know, and the creative kind of like the creative
Spirit.
moment. Rather than the thing. It's not about the thing.
It's the Promethean inspiration of, whatever, like the spark of creativity, the divine muse.
It's art because I say it is, right? Because I'm an artist and I said this is art.
Yeah.
So this photograph is actually, so it's got so many things to it. So he was known to make these kinds of leaps regularly. Like he would do this for shits and giggles.
He would just dive off of buildings?
He would just jump off buildings all the time. And he cut it. So before he was an artist, he was only an artist for 7 years and he died in like his early 30s, like 34 or something. And before he was an artist,
building, hopefully.
Not diving off a building. No, from like a heart attack or something, really sadly. He, before he was an artist, he was a judo master.
Ah.
Yes. And he was like 100% dedicated to judo. He went to Japan. He studied at like a major judo school. He was a black belt. He was 4th level Dan, in like he was really high up. He wanted to start a judo academy back in France. He was like dedicated not just to judo, but to like Buddhist principles, and like very spiritual. So the whole idea of leaping into the void is this. I'm not a Buddhist scholar, so, I'm not going to pretend I know what his kind of like connection to this was. But the void is kind of, this, from what I understand, the kind of that state that you want to achieve is understanding the void and understanding like how nothing really exists because everything is the same. Everything is part of this nothingness, this emptiness,
Yeah, we're just a bunch of particles.
And so once you accept that, once you accept the void, once you make the leap into the void, you're like one with everything, right? From what I understand. I could be totally getting this wrong.
Well, I think that it's, one of my understandings of Eastern philosophy in a sense is that you never get there and just stay there.
Yeah.
It's always something you kind of strive for. So like the fact that he was constantly making
so this was one of his he's always trying to like reach this void and this kind of like giving himself to the air, like throwing himself into the middle of nothingness with this trust that he's going to be okay on the other side of it.
It's a level of commitment that
it's so crazy and brave and like it's just so dedicated and like he put it all on the line, like he was living it, which I think is incredible.
Like I said, I just looked at this I saw this for the first time. Like I'm immediately concerned for him.
I know. Yeah.
I'm immediately thinking because it looks like you said he is going to smash his face. Like, cause I've seen too many, it's the age we live in now. I've seen too many videos of people like falling off of shit. And like, my immediate thought is this guy is just going to like face plant on the street.
It's going to hurt.
Bad. It's going to be real
And you know what's really, really funny? So because this has become such like a famous piece of, art history, there have been like, riffs. Well, first off, there's been like, how did he do it? Which we can get into, but there's been like riffs on it where there's a piece at Tate. Let me see if I can pull up this tab. There's a piece at Tate where it's that same scene by a different artist 3 seconds later. And it's just somebody flat on the ground.
Somebody found the street and just
well they did a similar enough street where it was it kind of like it's like an homage,
Okay.
And the guy is called like Cyprian, I think. Yeah, Cyprian Murasan. So it's from 2004, and it's called Leap into the Void After 3 seconds.
Oh, I see.
I'm gonna send it.
Is it like is there 3 pieces? It's like a guy like kind of like pulling himself up off the ground.
the one that I'm looking at is just a guy flat on the ground, and then the bicycle guy just a little further down the street.
There's this one is like, I'm looking at one. It's obviously a different street, or whatever, but I think it's a similar pattern. But this is from 1960, and it's just like somebody like on the ground on all fours, and then just slowly getting up and walking away with their shoulders hunched to deal with this.
So the other thing about this photo, I think the reason it kind of like, you have that concern about him is because for a long time, he didn't reveal how he did it. He just kind of told people, I jumped, and that's it. That's all you need to know about it, is that I jumped. And people, he did this as an artistic action that he then used for another artistic action. So he did this in like October 1960, because he wanted to create another piece in November that was called like the Theater of the Void, where he created a newspaper, a 4-page kind of like, tabloid, broadsheet newspaper that he distributed in Paris and like neighborhoods around like the city on newsstands. Like it was like a guerrilla, like he just placed it on like newsstands, and it had this picture on the front page. And it just says, artist of space takes leaps into the void, or the artist takes to space, something like that. And this broadsheet was basically declaring that day, it was like November 27th, 1960. Basically the Theater of the Void. It was a full day festival that he had declared as an artist, as an artwork. And he basically said, this entire day, everything that's happening today, everybody that exists today, from the mountains to, somebody riding their bikes, some whatever, like in not just in Paris, but in France, in
the world,
Europe, in the world, in the universe. I claim it as the Theater of the Void, and it's all in artwork. And I just want today to be one of those days. Hold on, I'm going to pull it up because it's like what he says is like really kind of amazing. He wanted it to basically be like a day that everybody appreciates the life, and kind of like existence. And he said, oh, here's what he says. I thus present a full day of festival, a true spectacle of the void. I wish that on this day, joy and wonder will reign, that no one will get stage fright, and that everyone, conscious as well as unconscious, actors, spectators of this gigantesque presentation should have a good day. This conception of theater that I propose is not only the city, Paris, but also the countryside, the desert, the mountains, even the sky, and even the entire universe. Why not? And I just think that's just such an amazing thing to do. Like, yeah, brilliant. Why not? Today is an artwork. Today is art, and
it is such an Eastern kind of thought. Like, this is all like every moment is a work of art. Like, and just like, it's just, there's.
Can you imagine being like a normal, like Joe Schmo Paris, whatever it's Jacques Schmock,
Jacques Schmock picks up his newspaper and goes.
And he's like, what the hell is this, dude? What is this shit?
Who the hell is this guy? What? Life is an artwork.
And there's like pictures of like people holding the newspaper in Paris streets, and they're like, what?
All I picture is like someone like, with the cigarette hanging out. He's like, what the fuck is this?
What the fuck?
All right, whatever.
But I just think it's amazing. And he didn't want people to know how it was made, so he wouldn't like reveal the secret. So Yves is mostly known for like paintings and stuff, and the photographers who did this are Harry Shunk and Janos Kender, and they were they worked together basically all the time, and all their works were signed as Shunk and Kender. And they work with a lot of artists, and they basically were known for like documenting these, because in the 1960s, like as post Duchamp, a lot of artists were kind of like building the idea of conceptual art and what art means. We're creating these kinds of like interventions, actions. Like they were basically saying, this is art. Me, shooting a shotgun into plaster and then it bleeds paint. That's art, jumping off a 2-story building. That's art. Like it was all, creating a sculpture that destroys itself.
Right.
Like when you turn it on, it destroys itself, So it was all, and these 2 photographers, Shunk and Kender, were documenting a lot of that. And that's what kind of like remains for us to remember, these kinds of like ephemeral actions, is these images.
These artworks that are just the moment.
Just the moment and being there and like experiencing it. Sometimes it's just like the artist. They came to New York in like the 70s and like, I forget which one, but there was an artist who basically hired somebody he didn't trust really to lead him around blindfolded in New York City streets in the 70s. So it's like all these kinds of like, crazy actions, and they photographed it, but they didn't really get a lot of credit for it at the time. And so they kind of weren't like, this is known as an Yves Klein work,
but it's not actually his photograph.
But it's not his photograph. Exactly. They created it and they like figured out how to make it look so convincing. Right. And so what they did was basically they photographed the street on its own, and then they photographed Yves jumping and spliced them together really, really well. But for a really long time, the original photographs so there was a group of people from Yves' judo school holding like a tarp underneath him.
Okay, yeah. I as I scroll down, I see that photo. Like,
yes,
like
so you can the full photo you can kind of see on some. It's harder to find. It's not like it's been exhibited. It started being exhibited in like the 2000s. There was a big show of Shunk and Kender at MoMA in like 2015 or something, because the Roy Lichtenstein had their archive, their photographic archive, for years, for decades, basically. So after they died, and they donated a bunch. Almost the whole collection to 5 like museums, one of them being MoMA, one of them being the Getty in LA. I think probably the Smithsonian was thrown in there because you gotta.
We'll give him a shout out.
So the original photos were kind of like known in the art world, but weren't publicly exhibited. So like the whole mythos of how this image was created wasn't really kind of publicly known. So it kind of kept this mystery, in the public imagination for a really long time, because it's not like how it was created, whether this guy actually hurt himself or not, like it creates all these kinds of like questions and concerns in your brain that, aren't immediately answered unless you really dig into it,
Yeah. And it's not, and also this is, we have to, in our, connected world that we live in now, it's hard to think of like 50 some years ago before the internet, and people see this and go, what like happened here? Like,
yeah.
And there's another photo, and I'm guessing it's it's Shunk and Kender. I'm guessing it's from the other angle, like across the street.
Across the street, the one that's like on the same level. I think that's my favorite. That
shows him like falling, and you don't see the people below, and it's obviously
you don't see anything below. You just see you're on the same level. You're on the same level. He's like floating almost. Like he looks like he's levitating, right?
He looks like a bird.
Yeah,
like he's
totally.
just like he's like ready to flap his wings, and he looks like he is completely off the edge.
Yeah, but
he's just suspended in midair.
I think that's my favorite one. That's the one where you're kind of there with him, you know, because you're like put on that same level, so you kind of like step into his shoes for a second. You kind of like feel that weightlessness, just because of the angle.
And I think that like this, like when it reinforces the other image. Yeah. It really reinforces the other image. Yeah. Like this guy just took a dive off of this.
And he would do it all the time, Casey. Yes, this wasn't like a one-off. He did it all the fucking time. Like he did like a gallery show where it was like a big empty gallery. And I think he did it off of the roof of the gallery that day. Like one of his big shows was was the void or something. And everybody showed up and there was like nothing it was just like an empty cabinet. Like he didn't show anything. It was just like people showing up. And I think he jumped from the roof of the gallery that day just to kind of be like, oh,
That's
also,
the art.
this is what I did.
There's a picture. I don't know if it's him. And like, there's like all these, because I also found another page just in like looking this up. There's a whole other page of like the dedication, like people.
Did you find that tweet? There's a Chicago kind of like curator who tweeted a bunch of the kind of photos of the people underneath catching him. Their faces are just like great because they're like, what is he doing? Okay, all right, we're doing all right, let's do it.
No, I haven't found that, but it's like I found one. It's like just shows them, but I found like this whole like series of tributes of other photos that are like tributes to the same thing. It's like an entire page of just like there's a guy like jumping out of the window of his house.
Oh,
the second story window of his house. And there's a guy like naked jumping off the roof of his house. It's become one of those like there's images that you study and that kind of like, other people refer to all the time. And here's you have there's the Murison after 3 seconds. There's another one that's Jack Falanga Leap into the Void 2007, which is basically it's the lift from
Dirty Dancing,
because it's a man standing in like up to his chest in the water, holding this woman up over his head as she's like leaping into the. When you think about it, that really is a leap into the void.
It is a leap into the void. You're right. Yeah.
And there's another one that's this is Didier Faustino. It looks like, and they built. I will include the link to this thing. They built this thing like you can lay down on, and you're in the position of falling, and you like lay on it.
And yes,
like you're in the position like you've just like.
They're like blocks of wood, and they basically put you in the same kind of like curved, position. Yeah,
and there's another one of somebody throwing their Christmas tree out of their second floor window. It definitely has inspired a lot of other people to do like to homages to that. And looking at it is also knowing the time period. Like my initial thought is not, this is a piece of trickery. It's immediately
I know
this guy fell and hurt himself, or he's like some sort of like gymnast and is going to like roll.
Well, he definitely, from his judo training, he probably could have done the sleep, because they say that he would do the sleep without a tarp, without any kind of like net to catch him. And he would just kind of like tumble and walk away, So it's thought like from his judo training, he knew kind of like how to throw his weight properly so that he wasn't going to hurt himself, which is kind of incredible.
Yeah. And I think that this is twofold. This is like, my thoughts on this are like, like Klein's work, the moment, moment and the, like, in this particular piece is like the moment, and it's not for anything else.
Yeah.
Like the photo, he's not a photographer. Like it's not that is what's the name?
The photo is like
Shunk
serving a purpose.
Right.
Yeah, Shunk and Kender. The photo is like it documents it. The whole point is like what this image represents, and what it makes you think about just looking at it, So it's that is what the art is, right? It's not just the photograph. The photograph is almost like a trigger. It's almost like this is what is supposed to like set you off thinking, and this is what is supposed to kind of like make you question reality, which is my favorite fucking kind of art. Whenever you're like, what the fuck is going on? Is this real? Like, and I think what am I doing right now?
We get a little, I think, in that sense, like we get a little video in our video centric world. We get a little too, I don't know, we're too used to seeing it live action. like and not seeing a two-dimensional piece.
Totally.
And letting it seep into our mind and interpret it. We're kind of,
because you have to fill in the blanks, don't you? Like with something like this, where it's like a 2D frozen in time image, you kind of have to fill in the blanks about what happened after, what was the point of it? Like, you know, what was he thinking? You know, there's so much that you kind of have to bring to it.
Yeah. Like, and that's one of the things that I love so much about photography in general, is that you can take a documentary photo, but I'm pretty sure it was Ansel Adams or somebody who's like, say there are two people in every photo, the photographer and the person viewing it.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it is so much of like the interpretation of the viewer that comes into play with this piece. And I think we are losing that to an extent in our society. I think there's more of a, like this, I mean, honestly, like this is inspiring me, like incredibly, just like thinking about it on lots of different levels of like, you know, I'm afraid to do something. You just need to make the leap. The sense of like how much
Klein would be so proud. He would be so happy to hear this.
And then just this sense of like, you know, how much of the work is dependent upon the person who sees it.
Yep.
And how much there's an interplay there. Like, and also the fact that the other photographer's name is Janos.
Janos, I know. It's Janos.
He's the Vigo. You're like the buzzing of flies.
You are like the buzzing of flies to him.
Janos. I mean, it's just, it is, like, I'm feeling very, thank you for bringing this to me.
Yay!
Because it is that sort of like that, you know, sort of philosophical sense of the also.
And I love like the kind of like collaboration of it, right?
Yeah,
so like
there's a lot of elements to this. Like
there's a lot. It's a lot of people. I mean, clearly, you know, it took a lot of people to create this. You always think of like the artist as this kind of like sole genius, when it never is. You know, it always there's so much involved in making art. There's so many kind of like elements to it.
It's a truly collaborative piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not even completed until like when you think about the newspaper, exactly. Somebody sees it. Somebody picks up that newspaper on a newsstand and questions what the hell is going on. Like even us talking about it now, you know, like 60 years later, this work is still creating.
Yes.
You know,
it's still creating a feeling and it's inspiring more art. It's inspiring just like living differently. Like, man, there's just something like it's such
this is art nerdery at its best. I love it.
There's so much churning inside of me right now that feels like you couldn't create something like this now in some way.
You can though. I think you can.
You have to think of it. You have to turn it differently.
Yeah.
Because like there's part of me that's like people would like, you don't get that interplay, like picking up the newspaper and it's a two-dimensional thing and people kind of going, what the hell is this? And like,
well, there is a lot more demand for answers nowadays, right? There isn't as much kind of like surrendering to the unknown, you know, like everybody wants to know, what is this? What's happening? There's much less like,
give me the part two.
Yeah. Let me figure, you know, like, what does this mean to me? There's much less like, does it have to have an answer? No, it doesn't. Like, does it have to mean something? No, it doesn't. It's just kind of like, make your own meaning out of it, you know? Which
it's like, I mean, it's, I don't know if you're on TikTok at all, but it's very much.
Alex shows me TikTok. My sister, she shows me I get TikTok filtered through a younger generation.
Yeah. Well, the like, it's very much a thing is, give us the part two. Like people want the explanation. Yeah. People want the behind the scenes. People want the like.
But speaking of TikTok, there's like one work right now that's kind of making the rounds on TikTok, which is this. Have you seen the robot that like draws its own kind of like hydraulic fluid back into itself?
But that's an older piece.
It's an older piece, but it's getting attention now because like this video of it kind of like doing the sadness, its action,
and the
you know,
existential dread,
existential kind of like emptiness of it, you know, and kind of like the meaninglessness of life, you know, of existence,
and how we anthropomorphize this robot now, and like
exactly
think about, like, how the robot is me and I am the robot.
So you get that kind of, you know, this is kind of the same conversation as putting a lot of, your own thoughts into this piece, this kind of like robotic piece that's making the rounds. And the video is basically a documentation of this work that happened 5 years ago, however long. So it's kind of, you find those little moments, they're a little bit more fleeting, I'd say, than they were. We're talking about this photograph and this event that happened 60 years ago. Are we going to be talking about that robot? I hope so. It's a cool work. I've seen that work in public, and it's like a great work to see it live, so it would be great if it's something that starts kind of like, being shown again, or
it's just I don't know, like looking at this and like I don't know, maybe it's my cynicism of like feeling like, oh, you really have to like find a new angle, like you're saying with the robot piece. There's such an emotional connection to it, but I think it is part of the emotional connection is people just feeling worn down.
Yeah,
and that just feeling like pandemic and everything,
right? Exactly.
All these other things that are like sort of just like. Whereas this piece,
it's more positive.
It's more like positive. Like the message intended is more positive, but like the initial thing is fear. My initial thought is fear for him, for myself if I was in that situation, and I think that's what he wanted. I think, honestly, I think that like you want to think about that.
He's pushing you. He's definitely pushing you into uncomfortable territory. Like there is a risk of violence, and there's a risk of it's dangerous. You know what he's doing is really dangerous.
Yeah,
and he's like pushing you to think, oh, what have I ever put myself in that kind of danger? Have
I given myself? Well,
Should I?
Not even in danger. Have I really given myself over to living that much?
Yeah.
Like just being alive and like, here it is. Here's life.
I know. I do wish you lived to be like 80 rather than 34.
Well, it's kind of a Jonathan Larson type of deal.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
It's sad. And
yeah.
But like, I don't know. I watched Tick Tick Boom and I really enjoyed it. And it really kind of made me look at the work in Rent differently.
Yeah.
But have you seen it? Have you watched it?
I haven't watched it yet. No.
The one thing that really kind of I find interesting now is like a lot of it revolves around him working on his like first major musical that he worked on, which he never produced, called Superbia, I believe. And it's so prescient. It's about people competing in the future on a TV show,
reality show. Wow.
For their 15 minutes of fame, and everybody's watching and voting on their personal device.
Oh, really? Wow. Crazy.
And this is in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Like very early 90s, like late 80s, early 90s. I'm like, this guy like kind of nailed our society. Like, why hasn't this been like somebody contacted his estate about doing this? This could be great
now. Yeah, totally.
As a movie or whatever. Cause there's, whatever. We'll talk about it more when you watch it. But like, there's a lot of like discussion of like, how would you produce this? Like, and it's such a big, it's a big story, and it's like, and it's a science fiction musical and whatever. And it's like,
I love it.
But it's like watching like the performances of songs from that show. And I'm like, wow, this is like, you see the roots of Rent in there, but you're also like seeing like, wow, he had a vision of society before we got there.
Yeah.
Of what it was going to be.
Which all good sci-fi does. Like that's, like Star Trek, and all good sci-fi kind of like sees little glimpses of what is down the pike, life.
There's a connection.
And extrapolates from like from like human nature and what we kind of are capable of to dream the impossible.
Yeah. Well, I'm just like, I keep looking over from the screen where I'm looking at you, and I keep looking at this picture of Klein, like as he's like in midair, and he just looks joyous.
He looks totally like within like his element, doesn't he? Yeah. He doesn't look scared. We're scared.
Yeah, we're scared.
But he doesn't look scared at all. Like he looks like he is 100% a fish in water.
Yeah.
Like he is right where he's supposed to be.
Yeah. It makes me think of all the, like, I don't know, like was saying before, like divine inspiration or Promethean ideal of like things like it, but it has that almost mythological feel to it of like this person, like you said, he looks like he's going to Superman his way off this building and just fly away. Like,
just keep going.
Yeah, you have no, like your mind just kind of goes like, what's going to happen? And it's like one of those things that we love movies. But it's those things that I love about movies when you don't see the thing happen.
Yes.
You're invited to kind of imagine what happens. Like there's the cut and you imagine what's going to happen.
You don't see the monster, but like the monster in your mind is worse than any monster you would see on film.
Right.
You know?
Or like this, like I imagine, like my imagination takes me to so many different places.
Yeah.
That if you chose the thing, then you don't then you just limit it. Like there's so much.
It's so much better when it's open-ended, when you kind of like can apply things to it. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, yay. I'm so glad.
Thank you. That's really.
Thank you for allowing me to geek out about art. It's like my favorite thing is when I get to just be a total dork about art.
Always welcome. All right. So it's time for useless information.
Yes.
One of my favorite parts of the episode. So Helen.
I feel like art is useless information.
No, I mean, it depends on the art. I don't know. I've seen some things. There's one that one piece that always like sticks out in my head is the most bullshit piece that I've ever seen was a pallet of cases of beer. Did you remember that one that we saw?
No. Was it at one of the art fairs?
Yes. And it was just like, but it was like $50,000 was the asking price. And it was just a shrink wrapped pallet
Casey,
of beer.
Of actual beer?
Yeah.
So there's a whole series of sculptures nowadays where it's Amazon boxes. It's just replica Amazon boxes, like sometimes in bronze, but otherwise just cardboard Amazon boxes. And it goes for like, 5 figures or something.
And I'm like,
every time I see, I'm like, okay, fine.
Replica? That's fine. Like at least you're making something. But this was just a pallet of Budweiser. Like I could easily call up a beer distributor and be like,
well,
and then be like, oh wait, I got this piece. I got it cheap.
Banana tape to the wall, Casey.
Yeah.
Banana tape to the wall.
Banana. Hey there, listeners. Do you enjoy podcasts? Of course you do. You're listening to one. But who knows? Maybe you're listening to this podcast because you're being held hostage by an interdimensional being who only plays extremely niche content to their prisoners. But if you do like podcasts, you should check out the GoodPods app. GoodPods is an award-winning podcast app that is basically the social media for podcasts. You can see what podcasts your friends are listening to, directly recommend episodes to your friends, bookmark specific episodes to listen to later, and follow and chat with your favorite podcast hosts, as well as fans of shows you like. Another great aspect of GoodPods is that they have indie-only podcast charts. As an independent podcaster myself, I can't tell you how nice it is to see your podcast actually charting when you don't have to compete with giant podcast networks with big advertising budgets or who cross-promote on hundreds of different shows. So go download the GoodPods app, find and follow The Nerdy Photographer, and leave a rating on your favorite episodes. You don't have to leave a review. Just 5 stars will do the trick. Or, if you're feeling especially generous, you can leave a little something in our tip jar over on GoodPods. That's right. We have a tip jar. I got a tip for you. Don't take any wooden nickels. And go download the GoodPods app.
I'm Lindsay Valenti.
And I'm Madison Stengel.
And we're the hosts of Ye Old Crime, where we discuss the funny,
hey man, he's a nice guy. And they're like, no, he's disgusting. He has hooves.
Strange. There are EVPs of spirits saying, get out in a room where patients committed suicide, and obscure crimes of yesteryear.
Here, Justin, here's your first phallic amulet.
Join us Wednesdays, wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'll see you next time with another tale
as old as crime.
Hey. And now for my favorite part of the show. What's that say? Useless information. This is always death.
In an Alaskan town,
okay,
a cat served as the mayor.
Oh my God, you know me so well, Casey.
For 20 years.
20 fucking years. Jesus.
In 1997. And
You know what's really hilarious? My first thought was, did they appoint him as a kitten? Is that even legal?
yes.
Was he of the proper age? Like, was he a full-grown adult cat
Was
yet?
he an adult cat? Was he able to make adult decisions?
Adult cat decisions?
In 1997.
Could he adult cat vote? I mean, come on.
Was he able to choose his own litter at that point? Was he able to, was he,
Yeah. Could he buy cat cigarettes? Like, what?
was he signed up for cat selective service at this stage?
Yeah, could he be cat drafted?
That's what I'm saying. Could he be cat drafted? Let's be fair. Because why is he serving as mayor if he can't be cat drafted? In 1997, an orange tabby.
Oh,
Now we love our love for our orange tabbies.
we do love orange tabbies.
Became honorary mayor of the Alaskan town of, I'm going to pronounce this right, Talkeetna, with a population of 772 in the year 2000. It would not have taken me.
Wow, that's this millennia.
Yes, this millennia. No. He started in 97.
This isn't like in 1930
No.
when they didn't have a lot of cats.
They were just joking around and be like, hey, let's name the cat mayor. In the 40s. We got nothing better to do. It's
Like
Alaska.
the cat mayor, yeah.
It's Alaska. It wouldn't have taken many votes to earn the position, though the small town did not have an actual human mayor. But Stubbs proved adept to the role, gaining fans from around the world and serving in his position for 2 decades.
That's crazy.
Greeting tourists
I mean,
and becoming a beloved symbol of the town until his death in 2017.
Aww.
Like seriously, served as mayor for 20 years.
Long live the cat mayor.
Long live Stubbs, the cat mayor. Thank you, Helen, so much for being on.
Thank you, Casey.
Where can people find you and your podcasts?
You're No Fun Anymore. Definitely sign up, subscribe. It's me and my friends talking about movies from our youth as we deal with our nostalgia, and whether it's a good thing or not. Because
oh yeah,
some of these movies
did not age well. Some of them did not age well. Yeah,
some of them hold up. Some of them do not.
Yeah, once we get off, I had a thought about a movie recently like that.
Yes, we're going to welcome you on the podcast soon, I hope.
Yeah, we got to figure out what. There's so many to talk about.
Exactly.
Well, once we stop recording, I'll tell you a couple of things I was thinking about.
I'm thinking Highlander, but I don't want to push your decision.
I mean, I will always talk about Highlander. I will go. You know what? I may become the most Highlander guest ever, on all podcasts. There is also a podcast that I am friends with that does one, each episode is analyzing 1 minute of Highlander at a time.
Oh my God. That's dedication right there.
And they're just talk about, they just watch that minute and they're just and then they discuss, they have a whole half an hour discussion about that minute of the movie. Thank you so much, Helen. I really appreciate it. And I hope to be on soon and have you back. I'll have you back.
Yeah, definitely. Once the art history podcast launches, I'll come back. Maybe I'll bring my co-host for that one, Emily Sharp, with me.
That would be awesome.
And we'll more art geekdom to be had.
Welcome back. Many thanks to Helen Stoilas for coming on the podcast and sharing that awesome story with us. I mean, it seriously very much inspired me to listen to that. You can listen to Helen wherever you get your podcasts on the You're No Fun Anymore podcast, where she and her friends deconstruct popular films of bygone eras and see how they hold up under the modern eye. You can also find a link in the episode notes, where I will also put the link to her as yet untitled art podcast whenever that becomes available. Also, be sure to subscribe and leave reviews for the Nerdy Photographer podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at The Nerdy Photo. Oh, come on. That's bullshit. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's clearly not Zaitaran feces. I spent many summers in my youth on a farm, and that is definitely bullshit. If that's the case, though, that means someone has swapped out the turds of some of the most infamous villains in the galaxy. But why? DNA? Well, I guess that's one way of cloning somebody. I certainly want to go into battle against an evil shit golem. On that note, hey, D3Z, could you mind grabbing some air freshener while you're out? Just something to cut the taste in the air. Until next time, everybody stay safe and stay nerdy.
Who's that coming back to town? You better start listening. Who's your heart been beating about? You better listen.